Oh, it's not time yet!
The Last Half of Darkness was originally a trilogy of shareware, first-person horror adventure games for DOS, released a year apart from each other starting in 1991. Information about these games is difficult to come by, and much of what I've found has been through forums and conversations from several years back. Though the series has continued to this day to include a remake of the original in 2000, and 3 more sequels starting in 2005. The original trilogy has a certain mystique to them, because they were so close to disappearing into obscurity. And if what I've read holds any merit, the creator, William R. Fisher III, probably would have preferred that. The original Last Half was probably one of the first PC games I ever played. I partially played this to relive some memories that aren't of the owls.
I did what you wanted!
This section features spoilers for a game. This section features spoilers for a game that came out 2 decades ago and has very minimal plot. If that doesn't deter you from watching my video, I'm sure something else will. Okay, well, because I originally played Last Half 1 on some kind of compilation disc of DOS games, I guess I missed out on the story pretty much completely because the manual really fills in the gaps. Without the 2 paragraphs that describe these games, you're pretty much wandering around some kind of Halloween world, doing things because they seem like that's what you're supposed to do. So, with my newfound understanding of the plot, I can expand on that. So you're some kind of person, I guess, and you have an aunt who, as the manual says, was some sort of witch or something. She was working on a magic potion when she was killed. So, since you are her only living heir, you go to her house to collect whatever she left for you, which turns out to be a ghost house! That's pretty much all you get. The main goal seems to be figuring out the ingredients for a potion, one your aunt was working on, and they are just sort of written in a book in her office. I mean, so that's taken care of. Then there's this random dead girl you find, and you use the potion on her, and that's the end of part 1. Part 2 picks up right after that, and has you delving deeper into underground passages beneath the house, looking for the girl you reanimated earlier. I still don't know who she is or what her significance is, but nevertheless, we once again face all manner of ghosts and ghouls to find her. There is also a little girl you take out of a wall. That's funny because it's usually the other way around, you know? There she is, right in your inventory. I don't know who she is either, but I definitely threw her into a volcano. This one ends with our hero giving a pirate ghost a tropical beverage and riding off on his ghost ship. Parts 1 and 2 feel like natural continuations of each other. They both make up one little adventure through a haunted house. Last Half of Darkness 3 is a little bit of a departure visually and thematically. After your ghost ship is sunk, you wash ashore a small seaside village, and once again the nameless girl you've been chasing has gone missing. Although this time around, finding her doesn't seem to be a high priority. There is far less coherency in what your objective is. You kind of just explore and get into trouble around town. I don't know what the goal is. I had a lot of trouble completing the 3rd game, and there wasn't a whole lot of help to be found. What few Let's Play videos I found had their hosts giving up before completing it, and there weren't any walkthroughs as far as I could tell. I was determined to power through it and experience the thrilling conclusion to this trilogy, and with some help from an old message board, I managed to piece together an idea of what was needed to complete this game. It took hours, but fuck if it wasn't everything I hoped it would be. Comfortably playing the Last Half of Darkness trilogy proved to be pretty difficult, well, mostly because of part 3, but 1 and 2 had their fair share of glitches and frustrations. I even tried calling that phone number shown at the beginning for help.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that
Hello? Is this 1991? I need you to find me, and tell me not to hide her in the trunk. It's the first place they look. These games are as traditional as it gets, down to requiring you to individually pick what action you want to take, and not even being able to use the mouse until part 3. Waiting for this cursor is agonizing. There aren't any puzzles, but everything in this trilogy is pretty universally vague. So much of your frustration will come from the fact that you will simply have no clue what needs to be done, or what works with what. As you kill the dog, it appears to change form back into the mysterious girl. Your life points are gone. Press Y to play again. Why did I kill the dog? I had a necklace equipped. It turned into the... So I killed the girl? I mean, it does sound like something I would do. There are some things this series never rids itself of, like sudden, unexpected deaths that throw you back to the beginning of the game. You're going to want to save constantly because these games like to utterly fuck you over. Though not so much a problem with the first one, the other two can get really confusing to navigate. The manual for part 2 even suggests you make your own map, because getting around can be confusing. Parts 2 and 3 both have mazes that all look pretty uniform, and that's just the worst. I hate this. I hate everything about this. I hate everything. Part 3 seems to have a randomly appearing copy protection prompt. You'll at any moment be interrupted by a question that you can only answer by looking at the manual, which you most likely don't have. Thankfully, someone was able to pull the answers out of the exe file and post them online. With all these built-in frustrations and all the glitches that make it near impossible to get through, these games are doing everything in their power to stop you from completing them. That's probably because if you have an idea of the solution already, you could probably bang out all 3 of these in 2-3 hours. Remember what you're playing for though. Remember what the stakes are. Perfect. All 3 of these games add up to an accumulated 7 megabytes. So that's probably why they all look like they were crafted entirely in MS Paint. This isn't my problem with Last Half's aesthetic. It's an issue that is still prevalent in modern horror games, albeit not as childishly ham-fisted as it is in these games. And that's what I like to call an overindulgence of spookiness. In other words, a complete lack of subtlety or restraint in trying to scare you. Nothing in these games is not spooky, in a something you'd find in a Michael's clearance section a week after Halloween kind of way. Any chance to make something violent or creepy, they go for it, and it becomes really funny. Not to say these games don't have a sense of humor. They clearly do. To be honest, if you think of this as some kind of weird, violent, and ironic comedy series, then it sort of works. There isn't any music except for a short jingle that plays when you start the game and when you die. And even these are removed for part 3, so going into part 2 I expected a similar amount of silence to accompany me. Oh fuck! So, starting in part 2, they throw in some voice work that sounds like it was processed through a dying robot into a melted speak and spell recorded in an abandoned sewage tunnel. It's sort of terrifying. This was my favorite part. You drop some throbbing gristle on this and you got yourself a game. Yeah, there isn't much to look at or listen to in these games, but if you're an adventure purist, you have to acknowledge these little gems. Well, maybe not acknowledge so much as accept. These games still exist, and there isn't much you can do about it. I played the original Last Half of Darkness trilogy to satisfy an itch that remained unscratched for 2 decades, and having come out the other side, I don't think it gets more satisfying than just a straight cut to command prompt. Just out of there like The Sopranos. In truth, if you're playing these games, it's because this was a sentimental and nostalgic little moment in video games. When these came out, there were games that looked a lot better than this. This was one of the earliest examples of a sleeper indie hit. It rose out of complete obscurity into marginal obscurity. And based on when it was released, that's still a monumental achievement. I can't say any of these are very good games. They're confusing, broken, and odd. It's not hard to understand why I feel a connection with them. Obviously, the creator thought they had potential because he kept making them, but these 3 are really goofy, and I can see how time would make you look back at them a little less fondly. Maybe he just needed time to hone his craft. I mean, he's made like 8 games, and what have I done? Well, a lot, but after a close call in 2013, I got rid of most of the evidence. Shit. It's fine. Everything's gonna be okay. They don't have anything.